Okay. All right. So we're in business. And Richard has joined. Welcome, Richard.
Hello.
So we're going to try to keep this as an informal hour. If anybody has wants to interrupt me, feel free to raise your hand. I'm not sure if there's any peer group people on, but if you are, feel free to facilitate or moderate the session. Let me know when somebody's hand's raised or wants to interrupt. And certainly you guys can chime in and try to get me to slow down my roll if you want to stop and pause on the slide and have a conversation about it. So this presentation has been something that we've done off and on, probably haven't done it in like 4 or 5 years. It's been updated. I have Canada Rental Association on the first slide. That's due to the fact that they kind of commissioned the actual webinar, and we created it for their use up in Canada. And certainly there's been a lot of follow through on that with the members who attended and things like that. So I'm going to stay with the slide deck for now and move on to the next slide. As soon as I get it. Controller working here. All right. So first off, we have a lot of material that we push in peer groups related to what's next, right? So it could be succession, continuation, planning. It could be exit. There's usually, it has to be a what next. We're usually tied up in our day-to-day, so we don't get a chance to do that. So the first thing I'd like to ask the crowd here, and hopefully you're unmuted, but in a virtual way, raise your hand if you think a business plan is good for your business. Right? Okay, couple of you there. So the key here is that we have a tendency to look at business plans as important. So let's take that thought, move forward. So keep your hand raised, or raise your hand again if you've ever done one. Have you done a business plan? We talk about it a lot, but we might not do it. And again, I apologize. I have to kind of unview to see you. But okay. And then next is, do you have a business plan currently? So we know Jerry does, right? Jerry, you have a plan?
I have part of a plan.
Part of a business plan. And again, business plan's about your business, right? So we want to know, where we're going as a company for the year, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, that kind of thing. Next is, now, how many people have a will in place? So will is, obviously you're identifying who's you're going to bequest everything to, or basically saddle with all of your debt, 1 or 2 or both, right? So that's the next one. Next one is raise your hand if you have a legacy plan, which has to do with operational transition. And so I know Jerry's been exposed. Certainly Lisa Spradlin likes to talk about this quite a bit. So I'm sure anybody who's worked with Lisa has probably got a legacy plan. So we're going to talk about that first. So the first part of this is really to say, do you know that we have a website for peer groups, and you can click on it and find legacy plans up there? You can download a legacy plan template and you can fill it in, and it basically says, in case of emergency, break glass. So that's kind of the intent of what that is. So by the end of today's session, hopefully you'll have a better feel for where you stand and what needs to be done for your business going forward. So any questions up to this point? Okay. All right, so planning for the unexpected. So this is a critical component. A lot of people say, oh, I'll do my exit plan in 3 more years or 4 more years. But sometimes you don't have control over that, right? So first, let's talk about this guy. Good looking guy, jumps up. This is back when I had hair, on a big boat, got a cigar in my mouth, all that good stuff, right? So that was 2008. Well before, I think we had 2 peer groups or 3 peer groups at that time. I had about 10 years behind the wheel of businesses. So I owned quite a bit of stuff when I was a youngster. We had self-storage. That was how we got into small business. I left my corporate job and started to develop some businesses. I love Subway, got 3 Subway franchises up and running, did 1.5 million in sandwiches, believe it or not, which think about renting for 1.5 million, having 1.5 million of sandwich sales, right? Had collision repair, loves cars, did 2 locations, really grew, did well. One went from scratch up to this level. And then I had a truck restoration business that I actually took one of the peer group rental members and partnered with, and we started restoring trucks. So had a lot of fun doing that. That was a long time ago. What's that, 14 years, something like that. And so I was 43% owner, managing partner, key employee, basically running the thing, but only owned 43%. That's a key note there. That's note number 1 if you're taking notes, right? So I had a side hustle at the time. I was in year 7 of peer executive groups because I didn't have enough on my plate to do. So what happened in 2008? So anybody remember 2008?
Economy kind of crashed.
Kind of, just a little bit, right? So the market crashed. That was bad. Also, I had a life-threatening diagnosis. They found a big bubble in my chest. So that was not a good thing. Now, there was no symptoms. It was a lucky chance that my doctor figured it out. But it meant that I probably had to do some stuff, right? Plan for the unexpected. So I had no key man policy. There was all the businesses we had. Now, remember, this is before I became an insurance salesperson. So kind of a story in itself, right? So my silent partners were a little nervous about that. And so because of that, they were very passive. They didn't know anything about the businesses we were running. So you can guess what happened next. Anybody guess? What did I do in 2008? I was forced to sell all the businesses, right when the market crashed. Now, the good news was we did it in the summer. Market crashed. If you remember, it was like September, October. So I was very liquid. I actually didn't even have the money in the stock market at the time, which was a good thing. But the point being that was a rough awakening, right? Oh my gosh, I should have had this planned out. I should have had a buy-sell agreement. I should have had key person policies, that kind of thing. So next 3 years, I'm licking my wounds because now I have no employees. I have to play with these 2 little kids. They're not employees, not as much fun, but you've got kids, you got to play with them once in a while. So just kidding, obviously. Taught myself guitar, went to concerts every day pretty much. And that never changed, I don't think. But again, my lost years, right? But then in 2013, I started to get passionate again about consulting and helping others. So that's when I started connecting these dots and said, let's get peers together, especially if it's a beach in Cabo San Lucas, and have meetings with each other and learn from each other. And at the time, I then got my insurance license and put on a suit, started to do executive benefits, which was buy sell. Key person, had my own story to share. All that good stuff. I did at the time get certified on business succession planning, and that was a real eye-opener for me because it became very family oriented, and then ended up getting a chance to do family business consulting. So the CFBS was mostly psychology, if you could believe it. It was little Johnny got locked in the basement when he was 10. And so he's not selling his shares now to his 48-year-old sister, that kind of thing. So couple other questions. That was my story. I'm going to share a couple other stories. These names have been changed to protect the innocent. So this is Lucinda. And Lucinda joined a rental peer group in 2018. So that was like 4 years ago. She had been running the business for 10 years for the owner, key employee. Suffered a heart attack after joining, and she was away from work. She then passed, right? Key employee. The owner had enjoyed his freedom, but didn't have very much planning in place around this key employee. And he had been away from the business for a while. He came back into the business, but he had issues with loss of profitability because she had built up the relationships in the business. There was also loss of some key hires who were kind of hooking their
Where are your sauces?
wagon to this key employee. And then there was a devaluation of the business. So he never quite replaced Lucinda and maintained revenue, lost profit, but ended up selling to an outside entity after 2 more years. So again, plan for the unexpected. What's going to happen with your business as you go through transition, especially if you're planning a succession plan to a key employee, right? Next is a third story from peer executive groups. This one is Bob, rental owner. Very popular guy. Joined a rental peer group back in 2012, one of the first members. So this group was very, how do you say it? A little more mature group, a little older group. And so they had completed PEG legacy plans with each other and had them for their group. He unfortunately suffered a heart attack as well and was in the business when he passed. And so the good news was he had developed his key employees. They had participated in Crowley or Tesla or one of our leader groups. And so he had the plan kind of shared with people, knew what was going to happen. So 2 key employees partnered up and bought out the widow. We were very active in the whole transition, went on to acquire 2 additional operations since then, and is still in peer groups and thriving and enjoying the benefits of that. So the key message there being that, I guess because he was in peer groups a little longer, the owner knew it was important to get that legacy plan into the hands of his peer group members in his group. So any questions on any of that? Keep moving. So survey says, so why do business owners not take succession exit planning seriously? So this one comes from an organization called the Exit Planning Institute. And real quick, here's some information. So they surveyed owners and they said that 75% of the people surveyed said they want to transition 10 years. 48% said they want transition 5 years, but 49% of the people surveyed did not have transition plans. 34% said they were familiar with their exit options, only 34%, and 17% actually had a transition plan. So that kind of gives you the lay of the land for an organization like Exit Planning Institute, which does a lot of consulting around this topic.
I have a question about that.
Yep.
If you can go back to the last slide.
Sure.
So if the people that said they were transitioning in 10 years and 5 years, but you only have 17% that have the transition plan, do those 5 and 10 years not have an actual plan? They're just saying it'll happen in that time?
Correct. So the idea is,
you'd be surprised.
yeah. Yeah, you can go around the horn with your peer group and everybody's like, kind of sort of got a plan. But there's gaps everywhere, right? So at the end of the day, we're looking for an actual documented plan of transition that takes into consideration all the contingencies, right? I think that's the key. So, yeah, you're going to have different responses, even for those that have transition plans. If they haven't been pressure tested to deal with all those types of contingencies, you probably should do it, right? Make an attempt at it. Part of what peer groups does is get you to a place where you're systematizing elements of your business, you're creating redundancies in leadership, things like that. So that's part of the goal here. And we're going to talk about a couple of ways to do that. All right, I keep having trouble with the different monitors here.
Yeah, Dan, and I'd also add in peer group always also consistently gets you guys set up so that your business is sellable, even if a succession is going within and it's not selling without, and there's going to be a transition.
Well, and that's the owner just knowing where to go, right? Knowing what to look for. So it's I like to say peer groups takes credit for it, but really it's the owner that's working on the business, right? And looking
Yes.
where we go. So the reason why we don't talk about exit, and this was really an interesting article. I love this, so I had to include slides. So we have an optimism bias, fair to say, right? Like that can create a strategic blind spot. I have a meeting immediately following this meeting for a company that they knew each other as peers, and they offered a service that expanded to 15 to 20 different operations. And they had massive optimism bias. Oh, let's all work together. This is going to be great. Well, now we're unwinding it, and it's like crazy the amount of gaps because they never had easy exit for this network of operators who are working together, all independent owners. So, as soon as I get off this call, that's what we're doing. We're trying to get back into how to unwind something that didn't have a plan because you're just optimistic. You're like, this is going to be great. It's going to be easy. So that's a big one. It's optimism bias. I think the other thing is we have a tendency to prioritize what's happening in our lives right now. So when you even do a business plan, usually it involves like 1 year. Very rarely do you go beyond that, because your chance of it being, like it says here, significantly discount long-term planning. It's because the chances of us getting it right are not as strong as, planning out what's going to happen in the next 3 months. So I think that's another reason why we don't talk about exit, because it's like, so many things could happen, right? Contingency. The other one is signaling problems. We don't want to talk about exit. And this is so true of generations. You do not see the older generation want to talk about exit with the younger generation. Absolutely not. Maybe 1 in 10, you'll have an older person say, hey, we should talk about this. But for the most part, the kids are waiting around for the talk that they don't get. And it's because it signals issues. It signals weakness, signals problems in the business or problems with themselves. It's just this weird thing in our society that says, hey, let's be careful about what we say. Let's stay focused on present, future. We don't want to kind of tilt our hand to everybody by talking about exiting, right? Signals problem. Also, there is a myth of entrepreneurial risk taking. So if you start talking about exit, is it going to slow your get up and go, your ability to innovate, grow, plan for growth? If all of a sudden exit becomes a topic for your leadership team or for your family, that's the other reason. It's like that's not who we are. We're entrepreneurs. We're going to leap before we look, that kind of thing. Lastly, exit failures are good stories. I just shared some different stories of planning for the unexpected. So there's all these transition horror stories, employees abandoning ship. We got screwed by the owner who left. It's not the same. We're dealing with one right now where 3 stores were sold to Sunbelt. And so, part of the daily grind is to keep the existing employees optimistic and happy and, not worrying about all these different exit failures and horror stories that have happened in the past. All right, so where do you start? So, and I apologize, I got pictures up everywhere. I'm trying to hide the thumbnail here. I think I got it. Oop, now we're on the screen. Okay. So, so where to start? So 50% of people surveyed in this survey said that their company is systematized and profitable. That's a good thing. But 86 said no strategic review or value enhancement project. So value enhancement projects, you guys might remember BMI, Mergers and Acquisitions, was a company we engaged 2-3 years ago, and they do what are called value enhancement projects to prepare businesses for sale. So a number of you took them up on that offer, and certainly it's still available, and there's different things like that. But it kind of says, I want to polish this up, make our company as attractive as possible as we get ready to exit. 56% said they had a good idea of the value of their company, but only 18 had a formal valuation done in 2 years. And again, it's nice to get valuation snapshots. We certainly do that in peer groups ad nauseum. We can talk about your value all the day long. You know, we like to say we're inside percentage of a certified valuation, where they might actually look at your fleet and value you from your fleet perspective. But the other finding, which is the most telling, is unrealistic expectations of company value. I would add to that, your net realized gain on sale of the business is typically unrealistic as well. So that's something where, you know, we have to look at what the structure of your company is, how you're going to sell, how your buyer is going to essentially create a billing or a bill of sale, and how they apply the bill of sale, because that will dictate different taxes that you'll be paying. So just be aware of that.
I have a question.
Yep. Go ahead, Rhoda.
How often should you be doing valuations?
Well, inside peer groups, you can pretty much do your own valuation every year. I like to look at every year. So if you get a composite book, it should have a what is called a run rate valuation, where we're looking just at your most recent year and doing a 5 times multiple on that, and saying, okay, there's going to be premium, there's going to be a discount depending on certain elements of your company, but this gives you an idea of where your valuation's running towards. Usually, to do a real valuation for transition to shares, we're going to look at 3 years, maybe average it and or weighted average those 3 years, and then we'll do a lot of adjusting entries to the earnings to figure out where the real value is. But just applying, if you know how to calculate EBITDA, you can apply 4 times to EBITDA and have that be your rough value for your company. You're going to be within a stone's throw either way on that in most cases. So where to start? So here we go. So right now we're at about 230 peer group members. So as we get more and more members, we start to look at how to break them down. We've got different stages. If you're in your first 5 years as a company, you're typically in an entrepreneurial stage. If you're in your last 5 to 10 years, you're in an exit period. So what does that mean? So exit period, you're going to act differently. You typically are going to slow a little bit on your refresh on assets, on your rental assets. So we look for those types of things to see, you know, what the state of the company is. So that's number one, get in a peer group, get with those types of people. Anybody who is in Jerry's Quartus-Maki group knows what Jerry likes to talk about. So that's the group you join if you want to talk about exit. Just saying, Jerry, we know why you're on the call. And then business valuations, number 2, absolutely get that done. Business plan, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year are great. You know, what is your role going to look like? How many hours are you going to put in? We have a lot of people. We have the author of the concept of 24/7, which is, we have now ads running that say, hey, do you want to learn how to work 24/7? Join a peer group. And there's an asterisk and it says 24 hours a week, 7 months a year. So we stole that from Mr. Jim Duke from Target Rental, and making a lot of money with that ad campaign right now. So thank you very much, Jim. I don't know if he's working 24 hours a week right now, but hopefully. And then legacy plan, and then outside board of advisors. Which, by the way, outside board of advisors is highly underrated and not utilized very much. It's so inexpensive to do and put in motion. So ask me about it after this call if you'd like. Lisa Spradlin is a strong proponent / participant in different advisory boards to rental operations. So thanks for being on the call.
You got it.
So here are options for owners, right? Sell to your children, sell to key employees, sell to all employees, which we have a couple great examples of ESOPs that are thriving inside of peer groups right now. Makes your company tax-free in the future. Sell to third party or never sell, right? So never sell would be the ultimate goal. I think any book that's teaching you about how to never sell, you want to read that book. It's a good book because that would be the plan, right? Your return on assets, your return on equity in your company are probably going to be better than the stock market at some level. So better place to have some of your assets tied up if you can mitigate the risk. So that's always been my thought. So what are the options for owners? This just is another way to answer the same question, but this gives you an idea of what percent are making these choices for what are called small to mid-size business owners. Partners will exit each other. So that's that red one in the center. It's just there's not a lot of partnerships, a lot of individually owned or family owned businesses. So family transition, number one. So if you are going to write up a transition plan, what would that look like? So this is really what you want. You know, if you're going to snap a picture, take this one. We are recording this, but you can hit pause on YouTube and take a picture of this thing. So we have a succession transition program that we offer members. We work on this element of it. So it's identifying goals and objectives, get your personal financial plan going, get your contingency plan going, which is that whole legacy piece. You establish a transition advisory team, what that might look like. So I know who people's lawyers and accountants are as we go through the plan and establish it. Get a business valuation or semblance of evaluation done. That's actually not the most critical piece, but it's certainly important. We want to look at value enhancement plans, because that's another part. Like, when do you want to sell your business or target a date, have a target date for transition of shares, right? So that's what happens there. I think there's, Lisa, I don't know if that's yours, if you can mute it, or looks like Lisa. There
Are
we
you
go.
sure?
No, I don't know. Yours has got a frame around it.
Can you hear me now?
No, that's good. Good deal. All right, might not have been you. So evaluation of all your transition options. Establish, again, if you have the advisory team, you're figuring out tax plans, you're figuring out estate plans, any other detailed around action plans. So people who are implementing traction in EOS right now, which is part of what we're seeing in the rental groups, a lot of these items become issues. And then if you're working with an EOS coach, or if you're working with somebody inside peer groups for prestige or EOS implementation, we make these actually be part of your plan. So yeah, you can hire us and we can do transition planning with you, which basically follows down through this. But you also can do it in the context of anybody who's actually working on their business can build these pieces into it, right? So difference between management succession and transfer of ownership. So these are some food for thought. So operational transition is transitioning the business side, right? So doesn't have to do with financial, simply, how far away are you from someone else, not you, the owner, managing your fleet, right? So do you have a fleet manager? Do they, based on growth plans, do they know how to refresh? Do they know how to look at the categories of assets? The one unique spot we do see with rental is we see owners owning that element of the operation, which scares buyers, which also, and when I say buyers, strategic buyers, maybe not big box purchases, but if I come in from the corporate world and I want to buy a rental operation and you're telling me you're the one who makes all the fleet decisions, it's going to be a little harder for me to want to acquire you, right? It's like when I bought a body shop, I'm not going to repair the car and I'm certainly not going to write the estimate, right? So I want to make sure people can do this, not the owner. So operational transition is a big one. Then you have the financial transition, which again has to do with your financial needs, your personal planning, as well as the person who might be acquiring you. And then last is legal transition. So these are the big ones that pop up. If you look at, 23 peer groups and all these different members, these are the questions. Does your family member have the ability to manage the company? So we recently have become licensed with DISC, really big fans of behavioral analysis and understanding, and not because we want to disregard a family member as not having the right behavioral profile to be a next generation owner. It's simply to know like, hey, this is their natural tendency to want to be this person. What we find is that, owners are very entrepreneurial and they may have children that are very steady and very consistent and detail oriented. And they may not make similar fast decisions the way you did. And so to carry on growth of your company might be difficult. Can they maintain it? Yes, we see generations be able to do that. But we also see generation transcendence where the children take it to the next level, right? So it can go both ways, but I think that's part of it is to figure out, do the people I'm identifying, do they have the ability to manage all the elements of the company? And then the second part is, well, gosh, my kids would never do this, but I've got this great employee. That person can do it. They can run it. So now to transition to them, usually it's the other issue, which is, do they have the ability to purchase the company? What's my time frame for being made financially whole on the sale of the business? So that's a key one. And then last, what are legal tax estate implications? If you're an S Corp, you have a little bit more clear view of selling your business because you will not deal with double taxation issues. If you are a C Corp, you need to convince someone to buy the equity of your business. Otherwise, you'll be facing double taxation, or you'll be creating some real creative ways for you to get your money out of the company, right? We just had, one sell to Sunbelt, and they did do an equity buyout. So that was really nice, made it easy for the seller of the business. So some key considerations. Number one, are you comfortable that your managerial team will be successful? And there's different ways that they can be successful, right? So first is, if you've built a company that is it's your reflection, most likely your key employees have your values, right? And they're sharing your values. So whoever you're selling the business to, you want to be aware of that. We talk about selling to Sunbelt, selling to United. They might not exhibit your values the way you have with your employees. So there is a concern that there might be a significant change of staffing in the company as it transitions. So read the book Traction. It's always good. If anybody needs a copy, give me a call. Send you one. So do they exhibit the necessary behaviors? Meaning, whoever you're transitioning to, that's where we get into this DISC profile concept. Ideally, we want to see a little bit of a mix of a DI if they need to take the business up a notch. If we've created some extraordinary success, you might want them to be more a CS, right? You want somebody who's going to not get the company in trouble and be able to be steady Eddie and run an operation. So when you're evaluating who your key employees are, you need to consider, what is it that your company needs? What does your profile look like versus them? And again, we have that available to anybody who needs it. Here's 3 generations. So first thing you should think about when you leave the webinar today is, what is the level of family awareness of managerial and ownership transition plans? So I started to prepare a family balance sheet for my family during COVID. And so it's like every 2 months, they get an updated balance sheet that shares, our entire family situation with student loans and, where all the skeletons are buried with regard to debt levels, different sources from debt, and also where our assets are, what assets you can touch and what assets you can't touch. So I just made a point to be a little more transparent with my wife and my children. I have a daughter who's very focused on this kind of stuff. She can get it right away. So I want to make sure she's aware of that. Anyone else have
Dan?
examples? Yeah, go ahead.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm trying to unmute. I'm gonna have to end up signing off because I've got to go into another meeting.
Okay.
So thank you.
Yes, we'll keep in touch.
Okay.
So aware of both the managerial and the ownership plans, aware of managerial plan only. So these are different levels that we're going down through. Or they might be aware of just the ownership plan, right? What you're planning on doing. So the goal is to kind of get all of it. There are some out there that spouse can't tell you anything about it. We had a person lost their husband. He went out hunting and just a freak accident caused his death. He didn't get shot, but he did die in the woods. And so because he had not shared his managerial plan or his ownership plan, it's a lot of unwinding. We're kind of making it up as we go along as we work with the widow. So something to be aware of. Do not have a transition plan. So here's outside advisors piece that I really have grown to love. Number one is obviously spouse. Getting the spouse involved and explaining, where everything is. Having an accountant active in it because they'll be the ones, accountants aren't really the best when it comes to cost management or management accounting, but they're really good obviously when it comes to taxes. So they can be a really good advisor to the advisor team. If you have a lawyer relationship, that's not going to cost you a ton of money. It's always good to know like what the limits of the law are. And then financial advisor, a number of people start to invest beyond the stock market and do things that might be a little bit more risk averse or risk taking. So if you start to go down that path, make sure that there is a clear communication channel back to your beneficiaries and your spouses and things like that. You may have insurance agent, you may have insurance policies that you pay premiums on. Make sure you know how to get the access to any kind of death benefits and or cash inside those policies and what that looks like. And then of course, some banks, you might have a good banking relationship and give you access and availability to some funding. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into how we do a financial transition to your employees. And then of course, your peer group is useful. So next steps for transition, you want to go ahead and do that written operational plan for contingencies if you can. You want to investigate all options on financial transition. We'd be glad to help you with that if you need help. And then also plan for contingencies. Investigate any concerns about legal transitions and hire a professional to do that. Let's skip over the Canadians. Is anybody here from Canada? This is some good stuff for you. Oh, Richard, there you go. Richard, you weren't up in Banff though, right? Or were you up there? Oh, got it. Yeah, you were there. All right. So this is boring to you. You're probably, I already sat through all this, Dan. So, same thing with tax concerns in US. By all means, reach out to me. I'll get you these, I apologize. I'll get you these slides on US. Very different laws in Canada. How you want to see transition of assets move up there is going to be a little different. So I'll just kind of scooch through some of this. Yeah, selling your assets up there makes you ineligible for a capital gains exemption, which is crazy. Down here, it's not like that. Ooh, jumped ahead too much there. Okay, so here's a good one. So this is transition to a key employee example. Mixed rental, 2 locations, key person's been there 25 years since he was younger, obviously. So the idea is let's do an operational transition in 1 year. So what is outstanding? Let's go. Let's figure it all out. Get that identified. Financial transition, this seller has been very gracious and saying, I don't want to put myself at risk if I can help it, but I'd like to be helpful to the key employee. So, let's do a financial transition over time. And then the legal portion of the transition, we're starting immediately, like first year while we're doing some of the operational transition, right? So that's an example of one. Let me pull this. So there are certain key operational transition issues that our peer groups have when we come and we start coaching them. Usually one is full oversight on employees. So, does the key employee have full oversight? Do they hire and fire? Do they make decisions around compensation? Do they even know how to do that? Do they understand ranges? Do they understand inflation-based raises or incentive pay or any of that? So that's a good place to start with a key employee, is to test those elements out and see how they are. Next, totally inventory, right? Full oversight on selling used assets. Test it. Who's gonna, if I was to give that over to you, Mr. Store manager, what would you be doing? How would you do it? You need to kind of be the teacher to the student and allow them to get their feet wet on understanding fleet utilization from a time perspective as well as from a dollar perspective, and be part of those strategic decisions instead of just kind of watching you do it. That would be one. And then obviously there, fleet acquisition, same thing. Oh, the other one was selling the used assets, right? Like, how do you do that? How would there be a rhythm to it? Do you have like a system of how you might do it? And then another one is sales growth goals. So again, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, why a certain percentage growth? We went through this. We've had 4 peer group meetings so far this year that I've been part of, and settling on what the expectation is for this year. If we had 15% growth 3 years in a row, and we're saying that we're going to be able to grow because of the rain out west, we're going to grow 5% this year, not 15%. How, are the employees participating in that conversation? Do they understand what that means? An owner, is going to do it because they have things at risk. Love to get a disc profile on the key employee. If you've ever been part of our rental leaders boot camps, we do this with every person who attends the boot camp, so that we can kind of like share, what their challenge is going to be moving forward based on their, or it could be good news. It could be, hey, we see how you are with employees and you're ideal and makes you a great manager, right? So key point with this is you identify that it's a gap for you, but then you set your end date expectation. So we're going to do this such and such by this time. So anybody who does EOS with us, we do the annual plan and then we do the quarterly pulsing. But if this gets raised as an issue, we then establish dates, and it might go into your long-term issue pile, it might go into your short-term issue pile, which means we need to work it out in the next 6 months, right? So those are different things that come out of the sessions. And then lastly, we'd say, or not lastly, but we would want to get it fully documented inside the legacy plan. So I think I saw Chris Clinton on here. Chris has done his documentation from a legacy planning standpoint. Now it's a matter of getting those details built out for the transition, right? So once you get through that stage. Jerry, did you do all that yet? I think you might have. The legacy plan?
Not officially.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll go through that, make sure that's done.
It's in my notes.
And then manage risk through transition with peer groups. That has to do with what you can guess. Risk is synonymous for insurance, right? So we're going to do the minute you gift. So we had 3 or 4 companies gift shares over the winter, right? So the minute you gift shares, you need to think about who you gifted those shares to. They have a minority stake in the company. Are they married? If they're not married, who is their beneficiary? Because if they pass on, those shares are going to transition. So we had 3 sisters who owned a company out west. One of them passed, had 2 nephews. So they immediately acquired 50% of their mother's stake in the company. And before we knew it, things had gone so quickly that it's become difficult now. So now we're in a process of trying to do buyouts. Then the buy sell was not ever put in place where there was insurance on the shareholder. So again, even 10% stake, how is that going to be made whole? What's the timing on it? God forbid if you want to buy out somebody's spouse who you made a key employee or something like that, right? So something to keep in mind. We do that at the end of as part of the transition process. And then this is a good one, I feel. Establish that advisory board, meet 3 times annually and just do it. Like, I don't care if I've seen them where they pay $250 to their key friends. I've seen it where they pay $1,000 and have Lisa Spradlin on it or something like that, right? So there's different ways to go about building that advisory board, but it can be really useful to your company. All right, how are we doing on time? Gotta keep moving here. Financial transition. So there are different ways to do this. I've seen it where you can identify a value for your company, whatever. Like you can say $10 million. You can say, gosh, it's worth 50 million, but let's say it's worth 10 million. So there's different ways you can establish when you start to transition shares. In this particular case, we're setting financial transition based on the current valuation. In this one, gift 5% of the company value to the key person. Once you've had that valuation established and you've like said, yes, this is it, then you go ahead and they get transitioned to shares. You can option shares at 50% of value to the key employees. You can do all sorts of different creative ways of transitioning equity inside your company. So keep that in mind as you start to establish your plan of transition. You also may identify that the key person wants to contribute additional shares or to purchase additional shares. Always, if you can do it, that's a great thing. That's skin in the game, right? They're buying their way in. At some point, you're going to have enough of share transition to happen. You might elect to work part-time and allow for additional shares to be transferred through that type of structure. But all of this leads to one thing, and that is getting to a place where you can qualify for a buyout from, in the US, it's the SBA structure. Typically that's helpful. That's gone up quite a bit. We've seen $4 and $5 million transitions happening. But even if a person, I believe, has 10% ownership in the company and a year has gone by, your company will be considered a partnership as far as SBA lending goes, which is great news for the exiting partner, right? You can get money into the hands of your key employees or your children. Children actually is a little trickier, but if they're key employees. And of course, there's the old increases in rents, consulting fees over a period of time to help with transition. And again, just an example of a financial transition there. So the legal transition shares, I could put a bunch of slides in here, but really recommend a consult with like James Waite. He does a great job. He's worked with a number of our members. I trust his judgment on this based on so many he's done. So keep that in mind. I usually will research a little bit around the trust side of things because of estate planning and the use of insurance inside trusts and things. So I try to have, chip in a couple ideas with regard to that. But if you have a lawyer relationship, we can certainly work with them. It's not a problem. We work with lawyers. Every time we do a SERP or deferred comp plan, we have different lawyers touching that. So what if I can't transition? So this is good. There's a couple people on this call that I know are in this boat where it's like, I can't get my employees on board and I can't get my kids on board. So I need to start looking at, selling to a third party. So there's strategic selling, there's local selling, asset sale, structured liquidation, partial sale. So these are different options available to you. I will tell you that, depending on your size and your location as it relates to some of the big box operators out there, you may or may not be interesting from a strategic selling standpoint. If you are larger, but you're in the presence of Sunbelt or United in your backyard, we can talk about private equity. Some options there. There's a number of deals going on, especially if you're a specialty rental operation. There's a lot of blue sky right now for those types of businesses. And then local sales are more traditional, what you see in your marketplace. If you look at business brokers locally, they're usually moving businesses similar to how they move houses, right? So, I had 3 sales this month and I had 3 sales last month, and these were the types of companies that they were. And they usually do a pretty good job of targeting down through your industry. So I think of Philadelphia suburbs. I'm outside Philadelphia. I see transition businesses happening left and right all the time. Usually if your business is under a certain amount, let's say net value less than 5 million, something like that, right? Smaller you are, the easier it is. Obviously, you get a lot more interest. Maybe not from the industry, though. So just be aware of that. So it can be transition issues. Structured liquidation, you've seen a few people do this. We had one gentleman 2 years ago had a $2 million event rental operation, and he didn't want to deal with it. So he did shut the doors, structured liquidation, and did pretty well, just auctioning off everything. So that's something to consider. And then partial sale would be transitioning, partnering with somebody in the market who may not have the ability to get you totally exit, right? It's an idea. So keys to maximize sale to a third party. Timing on market interest. So that's not interest like the interest rate, but literally is anybody interested in buying a rental operation in this market, right? So the answer to that question, by the way, is yes. There are plenty of rental operators selling right now in this market. It was headed downward, but again, there's still activity, and ultimately the interest rates on money have not gone ballistic out of control as far as it goes with small business acquisitions. So you're going to see Sunbelt and United continue to pick off these onesies, twosies, threesies, small operations in certain markets. Going to continue. Timing on company performance. So aligning these two things is ideal. You guys can see the people up on the chairs in the first picture. Those are some people who had timed it right. They had incredible interest in the market M&A activity was incredibly high, and their company performance happened to be at a high point, you know, a couple Top Gun operations up there. So just kind of nailed it, right? This is another one. Is the key employee an employee, or is the key employee the owner? And the more you have a case for the owner not affecting operational day-to-day, the more you can, you know, look for potentially a premium on the sale of your business, right? So we deal with that in our valuation model all the time. Is, you know, what is the you know, is the business going to be sold at a discount or at a premium based on those types of questions? And then also, are your key employees, have they only been there for, we have one business, the key employees have only been there for less than a year. And actually almost all the employees have only been there for less than a year. So it's going to be really difficult to position it quite the same way, right? Good people systems. Do you have a good, solid HR department? Do you have, you know, pay ranges? You know, do you have a record of when the last pay increases happened? Those types of things, right? Good financial management systems, always helpful. And fleet is the appropriate mix and age. And that means, are you refreshing at 16%, or are you refreshing at, you know, 5%? So you're not moving a lot of your fleet. So steps to sell. Just want to identify time frame, look at the gap in your business using the valuation drivers, get the valuation done. I like to get a confidential information memorandum if you feel like you're going to have trouble selling to the Sunbelts of the world or something like that. Let's just get a CIM done. Let's talk about working with a broker locally. Let's talk about your best customers, your best vendors, and that CIM is just a PowerPoint that tells all the good highlights about you and your business, right? Identify the type of sale that you'd want. That's an asset sale versus an equity sale. And we can talk about that. And then, of course, engage support, which would be getting involved with us, right? Or something. This is a valuation driver scorecard. So there are 16 valuation drivers that we look at to identify on a scale of 1 to 5 where you might end up in terms of getting a premium on the sale of your business or not. So your facilitator can give you this, or you guys as a group can do it inside your peer group. I don't know if, I think Renalosis did this, right, Jerry? Might have done it. I don't know. You might have. It was a scorecard. Yeah, here's the last. So 17 questions. So this is what the valuation report looks like. These are offered inside peer groups at $350 a pop now. I recommend you update it, you know, once a year. If you catch me at the right day and I just have to pop in a couple numbers, you're not going to get billed. So depending on the timing of when you send it over. But yeah, we've done 271 companies. That's a lot in the rental space. So, you know, definitely have a good look into valuations. These are some of the, what we call toggle switches, which determine the premium that you receive on your valuation and versus a discount, right? So the big one here is impact on profit and revenue if the owner leaves. We, for the most part, say it remains the same. But if we know that you're the guy or the gal, then we might bump you up here, and that may hurt some of the value of the company. This is just some key metrics that come out of that report. So what happens during the sale? So I'm at the end here. I appreciate you guys hanging in there this long. So the buyer typically offers a letter of intent. Be very careful about that. You know, I prefer to see a letter of intent come with dollars attached, $5,000, $10,000, whatever it is, that they lose if they walk away. Because you signing a letter of intent takes you off the market, right? You can't keep negotiating with other potential buyers. So they need to be serious about it, but also be aware that if you sign a letter of intent, it can in some ways be legally binding. So just be very careful about signing a letter of intent. You can take a letter of intent and say, we'll work inside the context of this. But you don't necessarily have to sign it for them to move into some due diligence. This may or may not include the terms of the sale. I've seen some letter of intents that were just basically, general dollar amount or range of dollar amount, right? Figure out what the due diligence period is supposed to be. I can tell you that Sunbelt is by far the fastest and most effective, quickest due diligence thing you've ever seen in your life. When they sign a letter of intent, they basically feel like the deal's over. There might be a little tweaking to it, but they're very clean and very quick. So 60 days would probably be, on the high side. I've seen them transition to 45 days. But then there's other operators like private equity or family office business types that, they're very cautious. And so it might take more like 120 days of due diligence to get it done. My understanding is we had an offer come in from a group out of London to buy a California operation in our network over a year ago. So the due diligence has been going on for over a year. So that's a period where you're responsible to respond to their questions. I don't know if the person's on this call, somebody got a call yesterday and got an offer, letter of intent, I should say. And it had all the due diligence built into the front end. And I was like, just throw that in the garbage. We're not going to do all this due diligence for them until we sign the letter of intent. And at that point, then we can start a due diligence period. They'll establish a general sale agreement. That general sale agreement, by the way, is a second negotiation that takes place typically, because in the sale agreement, there'll be a bill of sale and it'll line all the items up that they're buying from you. So if they're doing an asset purchase, that means goodwill, it means your rental asset inventory, they're taxed differently, right? So if you're in Florida, it's not as big a deal. If you're in California, there's an element of that sale that could have California sales tax attached, 13%. It's a pretty significant amount. Florida doesn't have that, so it's no big deal there. Buyer pays off your debt tied to liens net of the offer. So all that means is, know that when you get an offer, the expectation on an asset sale is that you're going to take care of your own debt. It may not have to do with your payables, but it will have to do with any notes. And that's the bill of sale I was talking about. It definitely can impact the net you receive. There's also transition that they'll identify, and there'll be clawbacks potentially. So if you're not getting full payout and they're saying, oh, we're going to hold out 25%, we'll pay that to you later. Usually it's tied to a clawback, which means they have the ability to kind of hold the company accountable for achieving its earnings goal. And if it doesn't, then you don't get that last 25% or a portion of it. So it's a penalty. It's been used quite a bit. I've seen it used with Sunbelt. So Sunbelt does do those clawbacks on occasion. So what's next? So this is the last piece. Does anybody know this guy? I know Richard does. Richard saw my presentation. So this is Sheldon, and Sheldon sold his business. By the way, he didn't sell his business. He still runs his business in Canada. But he starts a new business right away. And I just had dinner with an owner who sold their rental operation last week. And, I kept telling her, you are now Doris Inc., right? Or whatever her name is. So the idea is, never stop thinking of yourself as owning a business of your own balance sheet. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But I can tell you that one of the biggest mistakes people make when they sell their business is they just go about their life and they don't concern themselves with their personal balance sheet. And so we saw someone sell their business last year to Sunbelt and just kind of got off to a rough start by participating in all sorts of neat little ventures that cost a lot of money. And it was like, wait a second, there wasn't the same type of due diligence and tightness around the balance sheet. So just be aware that, you as a person have accountability to yourself after you sell your business, right? So that's it. Oh yeah, so vision, planning, prioritization, kind of. So that is it for our session. We could time right now for questions, few minutes. Anybody?
I have a question.
Sure.
One of the options was to sell to the employees, so that would be an employee-owned business. Have you done a lot of work against that in the previously, or have you seen any rental operations doing that?
Yes, yeah, we've done transition from owner to employee. And again, we're tangentially involved in a couple of ESOPs. So we have kind of the inner workings on some ESOP activity where you sell to all of the employees. It's not realistic for a lot of people, but in some cases it does work. But yeah, selling to key employees, we offer a project-oriented work around that, which is just what you just saw, right? We're focusing on operational transition and the gaps between where you are now and where you should be by the time you transition the operation to the employee.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Dan, what do you see in third parties EBITDA pricing out there these days?
So that's a good question. So we have this conversation in the peer groups all the time that, you know, saying that businesses are selling for 5 times EBITDA is good as long as their EBITDA is normal, right? So we had a person sell for 7 times EBITDA and they were really proud of it. And, you know, but we had the financials and we knew that their EBITDA was way low. And so therefore the buyer said, I'm going to come in and I'm going to make 30% EBITDA. I'm going to have to trash all the employees on the roster, but it's going to happen. And so he was comfortable going up in price and ended up doing 7 times earnings. But I would say with normal earnings consideration around 30%, we're still seeing businesses go for 5 times EBITDA pretty typically if you have something to offer, right? So the big one for me is multi-site. So if you can get to multi-site, if you're thinking about selling in a year, get another site going. If you're thinking about selling in 3 years, get another site going. I can tell you that, you know, it's like flipping a house, right? You're going to put money into it, but typically if they're going to recognize the site as a location, the savings during the due diligence period, the transaction period of the M&A is decent. And so they're happy to say they're onboarding 3 locations from Target rental versus 1 location, right? So that's kind of, that would be my one advice is I see it happen all the time where, man, if you get 1 year into 2 new operations, your multiplier goes up.
Well, even though your EBITDA kind of drops, I mean,
Sure.
we just opened up a location this winter and, you know, just the amount of money you're spending to get the location open, it drags down that profitability.
The key thing with that, and if everybody in here is, because I know Jerry had multi-site at times, is this idea of really understanding how to capitalize the expenses related to startup, right? So we knew when we did collision centers, we knew we had 18 months before we get to break even, but we also knew every dollar that went into cash flow for that 18 months would be lumped into a pile that we would then amortize. And it was just an important nuance for our brains, because otherwise we're sitting there going, oh, I just killed my all the EBITDA cash flow coming out of this operation I used and spoiled over here. Now I need to run it for 3 years to get it to the next level. But if you don't look at it that way, you know, look at it as you're using your money for different reasons. It'd be the equivalent of you buying a house and renovating it in Arizona, right? It's just a different thing. You know, so the money is there for that. It's for this expansion project, but you know, you also could have gotten the money from a different source, but you decided to fund it with your own losses, right? Or your not losses, but your earnings.
And do you represent buyers and sellers, or are you still not in that business?
No, not in that business. In fact, we backed even further away, we have a couple of small operations that we're trying to put with brokers. I have some in New Jersey and Chicago right now, and working in different markets, trying to connect a good rental operation with a broker locally. But we do have a nice informal network of rental brokers. So anybody and everybody you can ever name, we have worked with and have relationships with. So right now we have 5 members who are positioned to sell, and they're working with those rental brokers that are at our meeting of the minds and different conferences we've held.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else? Brittany, you all excited? So, okay. Oh, now she's on.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, she's excited. Great. This is always fun to do in the afternoon when we hit up the these types of legacy webinars, but I appreciate everybody's time. We'll send you guys a follow-up email with all the stuff. So everything I talked about, the slide deck, all the legacy planning materials, the business planning materials, because it's obviously all part of being networked with your peers here at Peer Group. So we'll make sure to get that in your hands. And Jerry and Chris and Brian, I know I owe all 3 of you guys phone calls this week. So I'll be right. I'll give you a shout.
Sure you will.
Yeah, I will.
No problem, Dan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Take
Take
care,
care of
Rhoda.
yourself.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you, Brian.
Take care. Thank you, Dan.